Okay, I have to be honest with you. When I saw what we were covering today, I had this like visceral reaction.
Oh, yeah?
I saw the title, and I immediately smelled the inside of my high school locker.
Mhm.
We are talking about J.D. Salinger,
Ah.
The Catcher in the Rye.
It creates a sense memory, doesn't it? It's one of those cultural monoliths.
No, please.
I feel like if we walked out onto the street right now and just held up a picture of a red hunting hat, half the people would roll their eyes and the other half would start crying about the loss of innocence.
That is exactly it. It's the most polarized classic I can think of. You either read it at 16 and decided Holden Caulfield was like the prophet of your generation.
One guy who got it.
Right. Or you read it and thought, good Lord, this rich kid needs to stop whining, get over himself, and just do his homework.
And which camp were you in?
I'll admit, I was solidly in the second camp.
And you are definitely not alone in that. That reaction, the irritation with Holden, is almost as famous as the book itself. But here is the thing about today's deep dive and why I'm actually excited to drag you back into Salinger's world.
Okay.
We aren't just rereading the paperback. We aren't doing a book report on the themes you forgot from English Lit.
No, and that's the only reason I agreed to this. We are looking at a stack of research and analysis specifically focused on the audiobook experience.
Right.
And the central argument here is fascinating. The source material claims that changing the medium, shifting from your eyes scanning a page to your ears listening to a voice, completely rewires the psychological profile of the story.
It's a bold claim, but the evidence, it really holds up. The source material argues that the audio format acts like a skeleton key.
A skeleton key, I like that.
It unlocks themes that are almost invisible when you're just reading the text silently. It argues that when you hear it, the story stops being a manifesto for rebellious teenagers and reveals itself as something much darker.
And more tender, right.
Yeah.
The source called it an emotional confession.
That phrase really stuck with me. Emotional confession.
Yeah, because when I read it back in the day, it just felt like a rant, a long, unedited blog post before blog posts were even a thing.
But the sources we're looking at today suggest that the audio strips away that cool rebel image and reveals a profile of unprocessed grief.
And that term, unprocessed grief.
Yeah.
That's the thread we're going to pull on.
For the next 15 minutes, yeah. Because once you see Holden through that lens, specifically through the audio experience, you cannot unsee it.
It changes everything.
The entire texture of the narrative.
So here is the mission for today. We are going to figure out why this story transforms when it enters through your ears instead of your eyes. We're going to deconstruct the phony defense mechanism, and we're going to look at why this 1951 novel might actually be more relevant to our modern social media fried brains than we realize.
Let's start with that first big shift, the medium itself.
Right. The Media Matters section of our notes. The analysis makes this really interesting observation right off the bat. It says, listening to the audiobook feels like overhearing a troubled mind.
It's such a powerful image. Think about the physical act of reading a book. There is a safety to it, a distance.
You're in control.
You are holding the object, you are the observer, and most importantly, you control the pace. If Holden starts rambling about ducks or suitcases, you can speed up, you can skim.
I absolutely skimmed. I remember thinking, okay, we get it. You hate your roommate, move on.
Exactly. We all did. But the source argues that the audiobook creates this forced intimacy.
It removes your ability to skim.
It does. It's first-person narration, sure. But when it's spoken by a talented actor, it feels like someone is talking directly into your headphones.
Like a private diary is being read aloud to you.
Or, and I love this analogy, like you're stuck on a park bench next to a stranger who is just unraveling and you can't politely walk away.
That's a little terrifying, actually. But it makes sense. It feels less like literature with a capital L.
And more like a raw human moment.
Yeah.
The source mentions that the pacing is a huge part of this.
Right. It captures the natural rhythm of real thought.
Which is messy. Real thought isn't linear. It jumps, it pauses, it loops back. When you read the text, Holden's digressions feel repetitive.
Annoying,
yeah. But the analysis points out that in the audio version, you are forced to sit with him in those pauses. You hear the hesitation. You hear the silence where he's frantically trying to figure out what he actually feels versus what he thinks he should feel.
So it stops being bad writing or annoying rambling and starts becoming a realistic depiction of anxiety.
Precisely. It shifts the listener from a position of judgment to a position of witnessing.
Okay, but I have to push back on one thing here. The sarcasm. Holden is the king of sarcasm. It killed me. It really did. Phony this, phony that. If I'm listening to that in my ear for 10 hours, isn't that going to be excruciating?
You'd think so.
Does the audio make him sound more bitter?
That's the logical assumption. But the source argues the exact opposite. It says that the humor and bitterness actually feel more authentic and less performative when they're spoken.
How does that work? Sarcasm is sarcasm.
Well, on the page, the words are just flat. Holden's constant complaints can read as arrogance.
Pure snobbery.
Pure snobbery.
Yeah.
But the audio performance highlights the fragility behind the sarcasm.
The fragility?
Yes. You hear the crack in the voice. You hear the exhaustion. The analysis notes that the emotional breakdowns hit much harder because you aren't just reading the words, "I felt so depressed."
You're hearing it?
You are hearing the tone of someone who is on the verge of tears, but is desperately trying to mask it with a joke.
That is a massive shift. So we're moving from judging his actions, "Why did you get kicked out of school again, you idiot?" to understanding his state of mind.
It's the difference between reading a transcript of a friend complaining versus sitting in the room with them while they cry. The judgment evaporates.
And you're left with concern.
You are. You realize the sarcasm isn't an attack, it's a defense.
Which leads us perfectly into the deconstruction of the character himself. The source explicitly challenges the idea that The Catcher in the Rye is a book about teenage rebellion.
Which is wild because if you look at pop culture or even how it's marketed, it is the rebel book. The rebel without a cause manual.
Right. It's the book you carry around when you want people to know you're deep and misunderstood.
But our notes say it's actually about three very different things: fear of adulthood, loss of innocence, and emotional isolation.
That's a crucial distinction. Rebellion implies a fight against authority.
You're trying to tear down the system. You want to burn the school down. But the source argues Holden isn't fighting, he's fleeing. He is terrified.
We have to talk about his favorite word, though. Phony.
Oh, phony.
If I had $1 for every time the word phony shows up in this analysis,
You'd be able to afford prep school tuition.
seriously. The movies are phony, the schools are phony, the people are phony. I always took that as him just being a judgmental brat. He's a kid who thinks he's smarter and better than everyone else.
And that is the surface level reading. And honestly, if you just read the text, it's a valid interpretation. He is judgmental.
He is.
But here is where the psychological profile in our source material gets really interesting. It argues that this obsession with phoniness is actually a high-level defense mechanism. Holden isn't just angry, he is hurting.
So judgment is a shield.
Think about it psychologically. Judgment is the ultimate way to create distance. If I criticize you, I push you away.
Yeah.
If I label you as phony, I don't have to take you seriously. And if I push you away, you can't get close enough to hurt me.
And if you can't hurt me, I don't have to risk a connection that might disappear.
Bingo. The source makes it clear. Holden criticizes others to distance himself from his own desperate need for connection. He is profoundly lonely.
So
He calls people up in the middle of the night, he talks to cab drivers, he hires a prostitute just to talk to her, but his way of handling that vulnerability is to reject everyone before they can reject him.
that makes him such a tragic character. It's total self-sabotage.
It is. The source describes him as this complex mix of contradictions. He's honest, but he's an unreliable narrator.
Funny, but deeply sad.
Judgmental, but oddly sensitive.
The one that sticks with me from the notes is immature yet insightful. Because he does see things, right? He's not stupid.
He's incredibly sharp. He sees the hypocrisy of the adult world. He sees the performative nature of society, how people pretend to be interested when they aren't, how they climb social ladders.
How they fake emotions.
He isn't wrong about those observations. He just lacks the emotional maturity to navigate that world without falling apart.
He sees the cracks, but he doesn't know how to step over them.
Exactly.
Let's get into the core themes, the real deep dive stuff. We have three main pillars here in the analysis. Theme number 1, the fear of growing up.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, most teenagers are afraid of growing up, but usually that's because they don't want to pay taxes or have a bedtime.
Right. It's usually an avoidance of responsibility. I don't want to do laundry. But the source says Holden's fear is fundamentally different. It's not about responsibility.
It's about integrity.
It is. Integrity. That's not a word I usually associate with a kid who flunks out of 4 schools.
Me neither.
But look at why he flunks out. To Holden, the adult world is inherently corrupt. He believes that growing up means losing your honesty.
It means losing your innocence.
Yeah. He looks at adults, lawyers, teachers, actors, and he sees people who have sold out. People who have compromised their true selves to fit in.
So becoming an adult is basically a betrayal of your soul.
In his eyes, yes. So his resistance to growing up isn't laziness, it's a moral stance. He's trying to stay pure in a world he views as fake.
He's engaging in a passive resistance against adulthood itself.
Which perfectly sets up the second theme, and honestly the most famous part of the book, the title, The Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know the title, they know it's a classic, but if you press them, they couldn't tell you what it actually means in the story.
And it is the central metaphor of his entire existence. The source breaks this down beautifully. Holden has this fantasy. He misremembers a line from a Robert Burns poem, and he imagines thousands of little kids playing a game in a big field of rye.
And there's a cliff.
A crazy cliff. A sheer drop-off. And Holden's dream job, the only thing he actually wants to be in the whole world, is the person standing on the edge of that cliff.
I'd just be the catcher in the rye and all.
Right. He wants to catch them if they start to go over the edge. Now let's unpack the symbolism, because the analysis here is key. The children represent truth, purity, and innocence.
And the cliff represents the fall into adulthood.
The fall into the phony world, exactly. Into corruption, into sexuality, into complexity, into the rat race.
So his dream job is literally to stop children from growing up.
To save them. It's a savior complex born out of trauma. He wants to be the guardian of innocence.
Wow.
And the deep insight here, and this is why the psychological angle is so important, is that by trying to save these imaginary children, he's really trying to save himself.
He wants to stop the clock.
He wants to freeze time. He mentions this in the book, actually. He talks about the Museum of Natural History. He loves it there because nothing moves.
Everything stays right where it is.
You can go back a year later, and the Eskimo is still catching the fish. He wants life to be like that museum. Static. Safe.
But life isn't a museum. That's the problem.
And that is the tragedy. You can't stop the fall. Everyone falls eventually.
You cannot freeze time.
No.
And speaking of why he wants to freeze time, we have to talk about the third theme, mental health and grief.
Yeah.
This was the aha moment for me in the source material.
Because of the big one.
The idea that Holden's behavior is almost entirely a result of unresolved trauma.
This is the piece that often gets overlooked when people just label him a whiner. We have to remember the context. Holden isn't just having a bad week. He has experienced significant loss.
His younger brother, Allie,
died of leukemia. And he was basically there when it happened.
Yeah.
And Allie wasn't just a brother to Holden. Allie was the best person who ever lived, the smartest, the kindest. He was the catcher in the rye before Holden even thought of it. Oh. And the source points out that Holden's behavior reflects unprocessed grief. He never dealt with it. His parents sent him away to boarding schools. He has no support system.
He's just floating.
He is. And there is a quote from the expert analysis here that is pretty heavy. When grief is ignored, it turns into anger.
That is the key to decoding the whole book.
It is. Holden cannot process the deep, crushing sadness of losing his brother. So because he can't process the sadness, he converts it into rage.
It's easier to be mad than sad.
Much easier. Rage feels powerful. Rage feels active. Sadness feels helpless. So he lashes out.
He picks fights with his roommates. He insults girls.
Disrespects teachers. But the audiobook, because of that spoken intimacy we talked about, makes this transition unmistakable. You hear the pain driving the anger.
It's like he's screaming at the world because he doesn't know how to cry.
That is a very apt way to put it. The spoken format reveals that he isn't a villain and he isn't really a rebel. He's a traumatized kid. When he breaks all the windows in the garage after Allie dies, that wasn't vandalism. That was anguish.
It really changes how you view his adventure in New York. He's not partying, he's spiraling.
He's looking for a lifeline. And every time he reaches out, he gets scared of the intimacy or he gets judgmental and he pulls back.
So it really makes you wonder why this book, published in 1951, still hits so hard today. I mean, the slang is outdated. Nobody walks around saying things are crumby anymore.
No.
And the setting is very specific to 1950s New York. But the source argues it's timeless.
It is timeless because the feeling is universal. The source calls it timeless alienation. That feeling of being lost, misunderstood, and disconnected, that hasn't changed since 1951.
If anything, I'd argue it's amplified now.
Oh, absolutely. The source connects this to modern anxieties about social pressure and identity. I was thinking about this. Think about social media. We are constantly curating these polished versions of ourselves.
The ultimate performance.
Yeah.
The ultimate phony behavior.
Exactly. Holden would have hated Instagram.
He would have loathed it.
He would have scrolled through it, calling everyone a phony, mocking every influencer. But, and this is the key, he would have also been obsessed with it.
Right.
He would be judging everyone while secretly wishing for that connection, wishing he was part of the group.
That's the paradox. I hate you all. Please love me.
And the source makes a great point here. Not all pain looks dramatic. Some of it sounds sarcastic and quiet.
That's a line I wrote down, too. We tend to think of mental health struggles as these big, explosive, cinematic events. But sometimes it's just a kid walking around New York in a red hunting hat making sarcastic comments because he feels like he's disappearing.
And that's why the source argues this story is still so relevant. It validates that feeling of not fitting in. It tells you feeling out of place is a human experience, not a personal failure.
So who is this deep dive and this audiobook actually for? Because we established that it's not for everyone.
Right. The source warns that this isn't for people who want action-heavy plots. If you were looking for the Hunger Games, this isn't it.
Not at all.
Nothing really happens in the traditional sense. There are no car chases, no big villains to defeat.
No world-saving quest. It's purely a vibe.
It is. It's for listeners who enjoy psychological depth. It's for people willing to engage with introspective storytelling.
It's about emotion, not events.
Exactly. If you want a clear moral lesson tied up with a bow, you won't find it here.
Yeah, the ending isn't exactly a Disney movie.
No, and that's the point. It leaves you in that space of uncertainty, which is exactly where Holden lives. It doesn't tell you if he's going to be okay.
It just tells you that he's here and he's trying.
Right.
So, looking at the final verdict from our source, they gave the audiobook a 4.5 out of 5 stars. That is pretty high praise for a book that so many people love to hate.
Very high. They describe the experience as raw, intimate, and unsettling in the best way.
I think unsettling is the right word.
It is. Good art should be a little unsettling. It shouldn't just tell you what to think. It should force you to feel what it's like to be that lost.
It's a portrait of vulnerability. It's amazing how a shift in format, just adding a voice, can peel back all those layers of irony and show the terrified kid underneath.
It connects back to that idea of the private diary. When you listen, you become the only person Holden is actually being honest with, even if he's lying to himself half the time.
You are the witness to his confession.
Yeah.
And that really changes the responsibility of the audience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We aren't just consumers of a story. We're bearing witness to someone's pain.
Exactly. And that's why, for anyone interested in psychology or just the human condition, this specific audio analysis suggests the audiobook is the definitive way to experience the story.
It strips the armor off the character.
It really does.
It makes me want to go back and listen to it with fresh ears. It's not just about a kid getting kicked out of school.
No. It's about the terrifying transition to adulthood and the realization that the adult world is flawed, but you have to live in it anyway.
You can't stay on the cliff forever.
You can't.
So we've unpacked the medium, the character, and the hidden grief. We've seen how the audio format turns sarcasm into a cry for help. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought that really stuck with me from this analysis.
Go for it.
We talked about how Holden uses his cynicism and his judgment of phonies as a shield. He pushes people away to keep his own innocence intact, to keep from getting hurt. It's a defense mechanism we all use to some degree. So here's the question for you to mull over. If Holden's constant judgment of others was actually a shield for his own loneliness, where in your own life are you using cynicism to protect your own innocence?
That is a heavy question. Are we rolling our eyes to avoid opening our hearts?
Exactly. Something to think about next time you catch yourself calling something phony. Thanks for diving in with us.
Dicker.